on the Voice of St. Louis. John Hancock just made a statement, his first since the funeral of Tom Schweich, the state auditor, who, and I think we all can agree, he was a brilliant guy, a hardworking guy, and a great state auditor, and just tragic. And our thoughts and prayers are with his wife, Kathy, and their kids.
Yeah, Tom was a very talented public servant, and, I think he was one of the best state auditors we have ever had in state history so far as I can remember. I mean, he really rooted out corruption in local government. He was aggressive about it. He found wrongdoers. He made sure that they paid. He was a very good state auditor.
He was going to have a press conference, you say, the Tuesday before he died. You and your wife were heading to that press conference to be there so that if he was making allegations, you could address them at that time, in person.
Yeah, the evening before, I learned of that press conference, and I finally heard a specific charge, and it was going to be leveled by a businessman in Kansas City that I had been making anti-Semitic statements, and the businessman was someone who I had never met and had never had a conversation with, and I knew that I could prove that, and so it was the first time, the rumors about all of this had been circulating, back to me for 3.5 months at that point, and I'd never heard any specific charge that I could refute. And so once I heard a specific charge, and I knew I could prove that it was untrue, I was quite anxious to just put this behind us, and be finished with it. It's come out in the news reports that all of Auditor Schweich's advisors had strongly encouraged him not to go public with the accusations. And as the Post-Dispatch reported this morning, he had a 2-sentence quote from a gentleman in Kansas City that I'd never met who claimed that he had heard something from my brother-in-law, ironically, and that was the evidence upon which his charge was based.
Now, John, this is, as we've said, the first time that we have publicly heard from you. Now, some people are saying, where have you been?
Yeah.
Why haven't you said anything? And that kind of has allowed the people to fill in their own details, so to speak. Right after the funeral, clearly you don't want to get in on the news story because there's a period of mourning. But what have you been doing in the time since Schweich's funeral?
My thinking is that it just wasn't appropriate to inject a bunch of party politics into the aftermath of a tragedy like this, and that there needed to be an appropriate period of time before I came out publicly and said anything. And the other thing I had hoped is that the truth would come out, and I believe it largely has. And the Post-Dispatch story today is, in my opinion, the most thorough and complete account of the last several months as it relates to this issue, and I'm grateful that the reporters at the Post-Dispatch really dug on this story, and I think the story now has been told. I've now been able to share my side of the story, and more than anything, I just want to get back to work, get back to business, get back to building the party.
A lot of our listeners probably think you have a convenient memory that doesn't remember saying something. Going back, and I know you've probably thought about this again and again.
Oh, yeah. Did
you say to anybody, Tom Schweich is Jewish?
I don't have a specific recollection of doing it. But I can't, I can't deny that I've never said something like that because how do you prove a negative? And I don't remember ever having a conversation with someone about that, but I could have. I have all kinds of conversations about political candidates, and I may point out that, Chris Christie's got a little girth going on there. I mean, you talk about these people and in a political context, and it is possible that I said to somebody that Tom was Jewish because I thought Tom was Jewish. And what I know for certain is that after Senator Danforth informed me that Tom was Episcopalian, I would never have said that he's Jewish ever again.
Well, and there's another interesting point here. When you are in the position that you are in as a person who is working on campaigns and when you're taking a candidate to a certain group. You would say, okay, so we're going to speak to this group. They're pretty Catholic, so that you have that in your mind, or this is a Jewish group, so a candidate always has to know who he's facing and what issues might be important to that group. So, I'm just guessing that if you're having a difficult time recollecting, it could be because well, maybe did you say, well, he's speaking to a Jewish group, or this is a group of, Girl Scouts, etc.
Well, I made the point to somebody the other day that, how many times did you tell someone that Mitt Romney was Mormon? Was it 10 times? Was it 1,000 times? How do you recollect all the communications that you've had with people? It's just, and what I have said from November to this day is that I do not have a specific recollection of telling someone Tom Schweich was Jewish, but it is possible that I did.
Okay, how about Tom Schweich's chief of staff, who yesterday told the Post-Dispatch and other media sources that she talked to you in December and she asked you about this whisper campaign. You said, yeah, I was saying that, but I'm not anymore.
Well, that's just not accurate. What Trish Vincent would have us believe is that there was a whisper campaign, that I was conducting it, and that the one person in the world that I admitted it to was Tom Schweich's chief of staff. That just is ludicrous on its face. My story on this has not changed because it's the truth. I don't remember ever telling anybody that Tom Schweich was Jewish.
Now, do you have emails from Senator Danforth?
I do.
Are you releasing those?
I am.
And they say what?
Well, the first one is I was taken aback and horrified that someone would charge me with bigotry. And so after I had my conversation with Senator Danforth and then later Tom Schweich, that very evening I was sitting at home and reflecting on all this, and I was troubled in my spirit that anybody would think that I was a bigot. And so I sent an email to the senator that evening, and I really kind of poured my heart out to him, recounted my history to him. I got into politics, Charlie, when I was 13, saving the Scott Joplin House on Del Mar, and I got involved with the city government at that time. The Post-Dispatch wrote a story about me when I was 15 years old, and it was the first quote, I think, of mine that ever appeared. And I said, if the house had been owned by George Gershwin or Cole Porter, preserving it would never have been a question. And the Joplin House on Del Mar, downtown 2658 Del Mar, is still the only historic site in the state of Missouri that honors an African American. And that's my heart. And so it disturbs me that anybody would consider me a bigot.
Now, there are some legislators we mentioned before we went to the break who are calling you for you to resign as the chairman of the Republican Party. Who do you know specifically who they are?
I know a
and
couple of
what's
them.
Your response?
I think there are 5. And, I guess I would say that now's the time to unify the party, not to divide it. I would say that it's disappointing that some fellow Republicans have jumped to conclusions before the truth has been fully revealed. And I would also tell them that if any of those legislators are ever confronted with false rumors or allegations in the future, I will be the first person to come to their defense.
There is the question, if you were this anti-Semite, why didn't people who had evidence of it come forward before you were elected chairman of the Republican Party 2.5 weeks ago? Well,
and that's a point that I continued to point out to the committee members. They were hearing these rumors, and I pressed them to press the accusers to please put it out.
Right.
Let's deal with it, and if it's so bad, let's get it out, and then we won't have to elect John, and we can deal with John and elect somebody else. And they, for whatever reason, they chose not to bring any evidence forward, and here we are, 2 weeks since Tom's tragic suicide, and not one person has stepped forward and said that I told them Tom was Jewish. Not one.
In fact, the auditor himself never went public with the allegations.
That's correct. The Post-Dispatch editorial page went public with the allegations.
Now, you reached out to Senator Danforth?
I did.
And the response was?
I have not heard back.
Would you be willing to meet with him?
I would be delighted to meet with him.
Okay, we need to take another break, I hear, so we'll do that and come back. John Hancock is with us today on KMOX. He read his statement and the first remarks that he's made about this on the Voice of St. Louis.
And joining Charlie Brennan and me in studio right now is John Hancock, who, of course, is one half of Hancock and Kelly and the chairman of the Missouri Republican Party, who read a statement earlier this hour, which he is releasing, along with some emails from Senator John Danforth himself, which will be available on KMOX.com if they are not already. This is such an interesting situation in so many ways because I'm not sure, even with what you have said, there are people who clearly want to believe, because suicide is a horrible, tragic thing that people want to make sense out of. And so this comes up that it's because of a whisper campaign. And even though that doesn't, to me, logically make any sense, not the whisper campaign part, but the reaction to it, there are still people who just want to believe that and are saying some really horrible things, which is a little ironic considering we're talking about making civility and politics nicer, and people are saying such awful things. I guess they don't sense the irony there. And you've said you are not going to resign as the chairman of the Republican Party, but how do you put that behind you? How do we move forward when some people are just going to stick to that narrative?
Well, I think the truth is has largely come out as it relates to my involvement in this. There was no whisper campaign. There's still other things that folks need to look at. I'm not a mental health expert, but my understanding is that these tragedies have a myriad of causes. I think some of that will come out over time. What I want to do is get back to work and lead our party. I am very gratified at the support I have from our state committee, the people who elected me. They have been faithful. They have been encouraging to me through this process. And, what I have to do is demonstrate the ability to lead the party. I inherited a party that is largely in debt. And I'm going to do everything I can moving forward to get rid of that debt. There hasn't been much work that has taken place over the last 2 weeks. So if I can demonstrate an ability with the help of our supporters and donors and committee to eliminate that debt in the short term, then I think that'll be a positive statement that the party is healthy and moving in the right direction.
John, address a concern that a lot of people have. How would a seasoned pro like you, who does a lot of research into people's lives, how is it possible that you did not know the religion of Tom Schweich?
We never did a full package on Tom Schweich. The only research we ever did on Tom was about a day's worth of work on his tenure in Afghanistan as the U.S. ambassador there. And that was back in 2012. I was working for John Brunner at the time, who was running for the U.S. Senate. And there was a number of people who put out an open letter encouraging Tom Schweich to get in that race. And it was right before the deadline for filing closed. And so, as we would do in any kind of situation like that, we did a very quick look at his foreign policy experience. And Tom knew that I had done that. He had confronted me about that much later in 2013, and I told him that, yes, we had done that research. But we never did a complete package on him. So a complete package would include the whole biography. One of the misconceptions about research in politics is that it's some dark, dirty digging through people's trash cans. That's not what we do. We go through the public record. We look at quotes that have been attributed to the person we're researching. We look at their voting history. We look at all the public documents we can to research them. And that would include, in a full book, their biography. That would include their religion, if known. So I may know a lot about Theodore Roosevelt because I've read 5 or 6 books on him. I could tell you his religion. I could tell you a lot about him. I haven't read a single book in my life about Warren G. Harding. So I can't tell you what his religion is. I've not looked at it. I've not studied it. So I don't think it's unusual at all. I think the one thing that I am most regretful for in this is that I just assumed Tom was Jewish, and that was stupid of me. And I do regret that.
Well, we had a guest last week, Jay Kanzler, on the program. He ran statewide, and everybody, including Jews, thought he was Jewish, and he wasn't.
Right, and I never discussed religion with Jay Kanzler, and I don't think I ever discussed religion with Tom Schweich. I'm not in the habit of talking about religion with clients. I just, it's not something I do professionally. I represent my clients, and we make political decisions and strategize and so forth, but it's just not something that I talk about it much.
I don't think that most people will ever quite know what it's like to be at the center of a media storm.
Yeah.
How does this change John Hancock moving forward?
Well, it's been really hard on Georgianne and the kids. And, my skin's pretty thick, having spent a life in politics. But I will say, I have known from the beginning, 4 months ago, that none of this was true. And all I wanted to do was address it and deal with it and prove it. And I wanted that news conference to happen because I wanted to be there in that kind of a setting where something is presented and I get to react to it. And because of the tragedy and because of what Tony Messenger at the Post-Dispatch did by publishing, not his notes, he didn't take notes. He made recollections the day that Auditor Schweich killed himself, typed them up, and went to some of the editors at the paper, and without confirming any of the charges against me, if Tony Messenger would have done the work that their reporters did and published today, this whole allegation would never have become public. I would not have been dragged through all of this. And I think the pain that has been caused the Schweich family because what Tony Messenger did is profound. I am deeply disappointed in Tony Messenger.
Well, when you look at what he did publish an allegation without corroborating with a second source.
Correct.
That violates Journalism 101.
It does.
He allowed people with an axe to grind to use his newspaper to get back at you.
Yes.
He also typed notes posthumously, which cannot be reviewed by the subject of the notes.
Correct. And they really weren't notes. They were recollections. He didn't take notes during the conversations with Auditor Schweich.
And we know how human memory is fallible.
Well, I certainly do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the Post-Dispatch has to answer some questions
well,
about this.
I want to make it very clear.
The editorial page of the editor. Well, let me put it. Tony Messenger has to answer some questions.
I think that's right. Yeah, the newsroom in that paper has done a more thorough and accurate job of digging into this situation than any other reporter in the state, and I will say that.
Well, good. I was hoping that was in the works over the last week or so. And when I wasn't seeing it, I thought maybe they're done with the story. But as you say, it is in there today. I would hope that all the people who made their judgments last week will certainly read the story this week. And we appreciate you joining us, John.
Thanks for the opportunity.
John Hancock joining us on The Voice of St. Louis.